Now we discussed about the balanced growth theory. Balanced growth requires balance between different consumer goods industries and between consumer goods and capital goods industries. It also implies balance between industry and agriculture and between the domestic sector and the export sector. The theory of balanced growth states that there should be a simultaneous and harmonious development of different sectors of the economy so that all sectors grow in unison. For this, balance is required between the demand and supply sides. The supply side lays emphasis on the simultaneous development of all interrelated sectors which help in increasing the supply of goods. The supply side includes the simultaneous and harmonious development of intermediate goods, raw materials, power, agriculture, irrigation, transport, etc., and all industries producing consumer goods. On the other hand, the demand side leads to the provision for larger employment opportunities and increasing incomes so that the demand for goods and services may rise on the part of the people. The demand side is related to supplementary industries, consumer goods industries, especially agriculture and manufacturing industries. The doctrine of balanced growth has been advocated by Rosenstein-Roden, Ragnar Nerkis, and Arthur Lewis. Rosenstein-Roden was the first economist who propounded the theory of balanced growth without these words in his 1943 article. His main contention is that the often social marginal product, often investment is different from need private marginal product, and that when a group of industries is planned together in accordance with their social marginal products, the rate of growth of the economy is greater than it would have been otherwise. He gives the example of the shoe factory. Suppose a large shoe factory is started in a region where 20,000 unemployed workers are employed. If these workers spend all their wages on shoes, a market for shoe would be created. But the trouble is that the workers will not spend all their wages on shoes. If instead a whole series of industries were started which produce the consumption goods on which workers would spend all their income, all the industries would expand via the multiple process. According to Narkis, we see circle of poverty are at work in underdeveloped countries which retard economic development. If, however, they are broken, economic development will follow. The vicious circle operates both on the supply side and the demand side. On the demand side, inducement to invest is low because of low demand, which is due to level of real income of the people. The inducement in invest is therefore limited by the size of the market, which in turn depends upon productivity, because the capacity to buy is in fact the capacity to produce. And the productivity depends on the amount of capital used in production. But for an individual entrepreneur, the use of capital is inhibited by the small size of the market, which in turn is limited by low productivity. Thus, the vicious circle is complete. On the supply side, there is the small capacity to save resulting from low real income. The low real income is due to low productivity, which in turn is due to deficiency of capital. The deficiency of capital is the result of low capacity to. How to break these circles? Individual investment decisions cannot solve the problem. Narkis cites Rosenstein-Roden's famous example of the shoe factory to substantiate his argument. Suppose a shoe industry is set up. If the rest of the economy, nothing is done to increase productivity and purchasing power, the market for the additional shoe output is likely to be deficient. People engaged in the industry will not like to spend all their income on shoes, human wants being diverse. Nor will the people outside the new industry buy a pair of shoes every year when they do not have enough to meet their bare necessities. Thus, the new industry is likely to fail for want of the adequate market. How can the market be enlarged? The size of the market can be enlarged by monetary expansion, by salesmanship and advertising, by abolishing trade restrictions and by expanding the economic infrastructure. It can also be widened either by a reduction in prices or by an increase in money incomes while keeping prices constant. This implies increase in productive efficiency and in real income. But in underdeveloped countries, market is not large enough to permit production on a scale that may lead to reduction in cost. Moreover, inelastic consumer demand, technical discontinuities, and lack of enterprise keep down the demand for capital. Therefore, the only way out of this impasse, according to Narkis, is more or less synchronized application of capital to a wide range of different industries. Here is an escape from the deadlock. Hereby, the result is an overall enlargement of the market. People working with more and better tools in a number of complementary projects become each other's customers. Most industries catering for mass consumption are complementary in the sense that they provide a market for and they support each other. The case for balanced growth rests on the need for a balanced diet. Investment. The way to do this is by a simultaneous wave of new plans composed in such a way that full advantage is taken of complementaries and external economies on the supply side and of the complementaries of markets on the demand side. Investment in a wide range of industries leads to vertical and horizontal integration of industries, a better division of labor, a common source of raw materials and a technical skill, and expansion of the size of the market and better utilization of social and economic overhead capital. Investment in productive equipment and in human capital should be simultaneous, for investment in the former would be useless unless people are educated and healthy to operate it. Social and economic overhead facilities. Narkis pleads that social and economic overhead facilities should be created ahead of demand to stimulate and support the various sectors of the economy. Private enterprise in an underdeveloped country is incapable of taking advantage of these external economies because of its incapacity to start a wave of capital investments on a wide range of projects. But Narkis believes that private enterprise can achieve the desired effect under the stimulates of certain incentives. He believes that ordinary price incentives may bring about balanced growth in a small degree. However, a wave of new applications of capital over a wide range of different industries can be promoted by the monetary effects of the initial investment and other effects. Balance between agriculture and industry. The doctrine of balanced growth requires a balance between different sectors of the economy during the process of economic growth. There should be a proper balance between investment in agriculture and industry. Agriculture and industry are complementary. An increase in industrial product requires an expansion of agricultural output. If employment increases in the industrial sector, it will lead to an increase in the demand for foodstuffs. Supplies of foodstuffs must therefore be raised. Similarly, supplies of raw materials should also rise with the expansion of the industrial sector. It is imperative that the agricultural sector must also develop along with the industrial sector, otherwise inflation will set in. Balance between the domestic and foreign sector. A balance is also required between the domestic sector and the foreign sector. Export revenue is an important source for financing development. Imports rise as production and employment expand, and domestic trade itself requires increasing imports of necessary materials and equipment. To pay for these rising imports and to allow exports to finance development as much as possible, the country cannot expand its domestic trade at the expense of its foreign trade. The domestic sector must grow in balance with the foreign sector. Narkis observes, balanced growth is a good foundation for international trade as well as a way of filling the vacuum at the periphery. He underlines the importance of improvement in transport facilities and advocates reduction in transport cost, abolition of tariff barriers and the creation of transport facilities, and advocates reduction in transport cost, abolition of tariff barriers and the creation of custom unions to enlarge the market in the economic and geographical sense. Narkis does not advocate a Turkey. With the increase in domestic production, the domestic as well as the foreign market is likely to expand. But even if foreign trade shrinks due to restrictions imposed by other countries, the best way is to expand its output for domestic consumption, thereby raising employment and income in the economy. Criticism. The doctrine of balanced growth has been severely criticized by Kitzman, Singer, Kurikalar and others on the following grounds. The rise in cost. Simultaneous establishment of a number of industries is likely to raise money and a real cost of production and so make them economically unprofitable to operate in the absence of sufficient capital equipment, skills, cheap power, finance and other necessary raw materials. Next, the another one criticism is no attention to reduction cost. Hindelberger observes that instead of starting with new industries, Narkis' theory does not consider the possibility of cost reduction in existing industries. Third one is the other problems. When the new industries are re-established in the demand for the products of the existing firms will decrease and make them unprofitable. At the same time, the demand for the factors of production will rise, which is likely to raise the prices of factors of production in all industries. Fails as a theory of development. According to Hitzman, the doctrine of balanced growth fails as a theory of development. Development implies the process of change from one type of economy into another more advanced type. Hitzman opines, this is not growth. It is not even the grafting of something new on to something old. It is a perfectly dualistic pattern of development beyond the capabilities of underdeveloped countries. Again, according to Hitzman, the doctrines combines a defeatist attitude towards the capabilities of underdeveloped economies with completely unrealistic and expectations about their creative abilities. On the one hand, officials in underdeveloped countries lament that the necessary skill and other resources for development are lacking in the economy. On the other hand, the protagonist of the balanced growth doctrine assumed that the persons lacking in skills and entrepreneurial ability become omniscient overnight and are in a position to start a chain of new industries. The whole doctrine thus appears to be a contradiction in itself. Disproportionately in factors. Another problem in underdeveloped countries is this disproportionately in the factor of production. In some countries, labor is in abundance but capital and entrepreneurial skill are scarce, while in others, labor and capital are scarce but other resources are in abundance. This is a great hindrance to the practical application of the concept of balanced growth. Shortage of resources. The doctrine fails to solve the problem of shortage of resources. It is based on Say's law, the supply creates its own demand. But supply of goods refers to the demand for factors, especially for capital, which does not create its own supply. Wrong assumption of increasing returns. The doctrine of balanced growth presupposes the need for balanced investment to provide a growing demand and the existence of increasing returns. But these two forces pull in opposite directions. If returns increase considerably, an underdeveloped country would not like to invest in a railway line and a roadway between the same points, and it will have to choose, for instance, between an oil refinery and a steel mill. If simultaneous investments are made in all related fields, the appearance of bottlenecks, raw materials, prices, factor shortages, etc. will lead to decreasing returns. Thus, decreasing and not increasing returns favor balanced growth. Capital lumpiness not essential for development. Although capital lumpiness of many social and economic overheads is often given as a reason for investing larger sums of money immediately. Yet, the experience of many developed countries suggests that many services can be provided initially at lower investment cost. Balanced growth not essential for induced investment. According to Kurikara, balanced growth is not, as Narkis supposes to be, directed to induce private investment, but to be desired for its own sake as far as an underdeveloped country is concerned. Narkis complained about an underdeveloped economy's restricted markets and low real income tending to inhibit the private investment to invest would be unnecessary if autonomous public investment of a capacity increasing as well as income generating nature was allowed to play a greater role. Does not consider planning. As aptly pointed out by Myrdal, Narkis did not explain how his limited desideratum of balanced growth of different industries should be fitted into the type of comprehensive planning that is the declared policy in all South Asian countries and that has a strong rationale in their actual situation. Concept of balanced growth applicable to developed countries. Further, the balanced growth doctrine is in fact the application of Keynesian underemployment situation to an underdeveloped economy. According to the Keynesian theory, simultaneous multiple development during the upswing of the trade cycle can lead to a balanced recovery of economic activity for the industries, machines, managers and workers as well as consumption habits are all there only waiting to resume their temporarily suspended function and roles. But in an underdeveloped economy, this is not so whether the state lends a helping hand or not, because in such economies there is no temporary suspension of economic activity. Capital, skills, factor supplies and economic infrastructure are woefully lacking. It is therefore wrong to apply a theory applicable to a developed economy on an underdeveloped economy. Scarcities and bottlenecks encourage growth. According to Paul Streeton, historically it was not balanced growth but scarcities and bottlenecks that provided the stimulus to the inventions that revolutionized England's and the world's economic system, and that inventions in turn created new scarcities and bottlenecks. Had the world depended on balanced development, it would have reduced or even eliminated the incentives for discoveries or at any rate for their application. Thus, it is on unbalanced growth that the history of technological progress rests. To sum up in the words of Louis, in development programs of all sectors of the economy should grow simultaneously so as to keep a proper balance between industry and agriculture and between production for home consumption and production for export. The logic of this proportion is unassailable as its simplicity. We may conclude with Dr. Singer that the doctrine of balanced growth is premature rather than wrong in the sense that it is applicable to a subsequent stage of sustained growth rather than to the breaking of a deadlock. Thank you all.